and welcome to the Blood and Pigment podcast. My name is Garrett Swader, and I'm here with Joseph.
Hello there.
Dan.
Sup?
And Fernando.
Hello, everyone.
So in this episode, we've got some big stuff to go over. We've got an errata to pick apart. We're going to try to get the pitchforks down that everybody's lifting up for all this stuff. So we'll go through it. We'll talk you off the ledge. A lot of the stuff I really like, so we'll talk through it. We're going to go through a little bit of a different format we've come up with here for the what's going on in your life of Blood and Plunder / wargaming. We're going to break it up into different segments. First off is going to be hobby desk stuff. So I've been using up a lot of my Firelock credit lately for miniatures. I've set aside a lot of my metal miniatures that I don't want to mess with anymore for prizes for people. And I've reordered those same miniatures in resin so I can paint those up and actually use them.
A real convert, huh?
Yeah, I like them a lot better. A lot less cleanup, and I just like them better. The detail on them is great.
Yeah, me too.
So, actually, a lot of my French stuff that had sat unpainted, because I focus primarily on Spanish stuff. So, a lot of my French medals got set aside, and then I reordered them. So, I've got a lot of the French militia and French sailors and stuff ready to be primed. That's what I've been working on mainly. The resin stuff, you got to sometimes go up and microwave a bowl of water and get everything reshaped when they get to you. So that's fun.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of work.
Yeah. And then Galleon, still working, chugging away on that. I've got a kind of halfway name for it now. It's the St. Peter, St. Paul Galleon. And I'm trying to do some gallery art on it that has those saints symbols on the back. So I was just working on that before we jumped on the podcast. So I'll have to throw up a picture in our Discord to let you guys see how I'm doing on that. But yeah, that's what I'm painting on. What about you, Dan? What are you painting on right now?
So I think I mentioned this last time I was on. I'm prepping to paint all of the miniatures we're going to be using for our Adepticon demos. So Joseph's been sending me stuff we've been acquiring, and then I'm priming it and getting it ready to paint. The last things that I have is I need to reprime some of the soldiers because they didn't get enough paint underneath where my accidental zenithal usually goes. So I have to reprime those, and I got to prime your mini specifically, Garrett. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I can start, and then I will start painting those. I'm going to start with all the metals so I can get those out of the way because those will take me the longest. And then the plastic should go very easy.
Thanks for working on those. How many minis are you trying to prep for? Prepping for those?
I haven't counted because I don't like math.
Ran out of fingers and toes?
Probably beyond the fingers and toes, but it's quite a bit. But I can't wait to get them all done and then hose them down with a couple clear coats so they don't scratch. And it'll help tame the bright colors of the speed paints.
It's gonna be nice having all of those for Adepticon just set up and ready to go, and we don't have to pack and unpack and everything. So,
and we're not using our minis in case things happen and minis break.
Right. Talking to you, Mr. Sausage Fingers.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. What about you, Fernando?
So I think we're on the same page preparing for Adepticon. I am working on the display forces. So I think last time that we were in the podcast, I was with the Dutch. Those are done by now, and I am with the French, and I am almost 75% done with those. So I expect this week, they will be done, and hopefully I will start with the natives. I've been basically very much focused on that, kind of trying to put a little more effort into painting them than regular, like trying to paint the eyes things like that. A little bit of extra highlights, things like that. Besides that, I've recently bought the fourth, so I already primed that one, but I haven't started working on that. But yeah, that's basically what I've been doing.
Is it a
Is that the Palisade?
Yeah,
Fort?
the Palisade Fort, yeah,
Okay.
the wooden one, yeah.
Nice.
cool?
Yeah, I am not a crafter like many of you, so I just like to paint. I don't like to craft. So I buy
Me too.
the stuff that is already prepared for me to just paint.
I'm like that too.
Garrett made his own Palisade Fort. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, that was back before I had a 3D printer, and I've discovered I think that I'm not much of a crafter either. I am a little bit, but I let the 3D printer do a lot of it now. Question I had for you, Joseph. Are we throwing up pictures of what Jason is doing on the Patreon?
Yes.
Because if you're behind the scenes looking at
And
what
Fernando.
Jason's doing, I'm very excited to see what these display boards start looking like with Fernando's miniatures on them. They are going to look awesome.
Yeah, we're pulling out all the stops
gonna-
this year. I guess next year, but yeah.
I was going to make that a quick plug from Fernando's work there. Yeah, those display boards were doing 16 by 16 inch kind of little dioramas with for each nation: Spanish, Pirates, English, French, everybody except for the unaligned. Each one a little bit different. And Fernando's making doing all the painting, and Jason is doing all the crafting, sculpting, modeling, it's diorama work. And I put a post, and I'll continue to put posts up on our Patreon, kind of behind the scenes for this project. If you're interested, if you're a Patreon backer, you get to look at the cool stuff while it's happening. So I'm sure you'll want to be a Patreon backer now.
Mhm.
Absolutely. What have you been working on, Joseph?
I think I still have some of the same miniatures on the table I had last month, which is embarrassing. But I have a set of 10 or 9 models, which is a lot for me. A batch paint. I have the English Frontier Militia or North American Militia set. I have a couple of Lanceros. I have a couple of the Bucanere, the ladies with muskets, and I have a second copy of Black Caesar, all based, ready for washes. That's what I've been working on. And then I have a Spanish church that I've glued together. I need to paint. I'd like to for some of the Spanish games I got coming up. And then I have a whole shipyard of half-busted ships. I bought a lot of like 7 ships and 200 models from somebody off of Facebook with Riley, my local friend here. And I've been giving the models away, but I have some ships that are kind of painted in spicier colors than I wish, or they have damaged their masts. So I have and I have 2 ships that my kids dropped, helping me bring them in from the car, that their masts are all smashed. So I have this whole ruined shipyard I need to work through. That's kind of my next hobby goal.
I'll just send one of those sloop hulls over to me. I'll take care of it for you.
I have it sitting on the pathway in my bedroom to send to you. It's just sitting there for a month. I haven't forgotten, but I've been just feeling
You can
guilty about it,
and you can send me one of the spicier color ones. I can strip that off. I work in a chemical company. It's no problem.
Do you want anything else? Well, do you want any more fortune coins, or do you have one of those little watchtowers that Jason made? Those are pretty cool.
I need to. I keep telling myself I need to just buy that STL from him, because I would like to print some of those for my store. So I need to, because I can print those. I need to just bite the bullet and do it. I have so much stuff on my printer that I need to do.
Yeah.
It's you can only print so much at a time, though. But yeah, we can talk about that later.
Do you want to? Yeah, that's been holding me up. Is there anything else I want to put in the box before I send it to you? So save on postage.
Right.
Yeah,
and I'm in no hurry. So
all right. How about games we played recently? Reports of glory and shame on the gaming table.
Mostly shame.
I'll go first here. I've missed a week or two. We had Thanksgiving just this last week, so missed that week. But we've been getting together regularly every week, pretty much. Got between 6 and 8 players at my local store, which has been 6 to 10. Really, it's been great. But the biggest thing is we play tested the Christopher Ming's raid on Santiago de Cuba raid scenario, which we're doing for Adepticon, and it went quite well. Put some pictures up, and Firelock Games shamelessly stole them without credit, so that's pretty good. It's going. It went really well. The English were winning. We had to cut it off after, and because it took a while to get set up, so we didn't get to play it to the bloody end. But I actually didn't play it. I was the game master. We had so many people that I just helped run the game and make sure everybody understood the rules and help people out. 3 Spanish versus 3 English. English start. It's played long ways on the table, so it's a 6-foot thick board basically, but the Spanish have to deploy in 4 feet of the board kind of evenly. So some of the Spanish start pretty far back, and the English start at one end, and the English have to run through the town and grab stuff. The Spanish resistance is they have to balance trying to slow down the English, or not get killed. They have some Spanish civilians that are trying to grab their plunder and get off the board before the English catch up to them. It was a lot of fun. It worked pretty well. I don't think we have any major issues we need to change or correct. It's a pretty busy board, a lot of buildings. That's going to be the challenge, getting all those buildings, including the big, nice foreground church, to Adepticon. But it went off really well. Everybody had a good time. Dawn, one of the other local players who's hoping to come to Adepticon, is working on painting up all 100 Spanish models for it. So that's a huge boon for us. Thanks, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And Riley's been working on the English for this and the Deerfield Raid one, which we're going to play this coming week. So that's what we've been focused on. I also played Hostage Raid, the land hostage raid out of Raise the Black. We had everybody play that. That's what we've been doing lately at my game store, just playing through scenarios. It's fun to have same scenario every table, see how it goes for different people. Everybody can help each other with the scenario rules since we're all playing the same thing. And I played Riley on that. I had Wabanaki versus his New England militia, which was very appropriate, and it was pretty fun. And that one, you can capture people's units, and then you can save your units, then come back into your force, which is pretty fun. Made for some interesting game moments. We had civilians running around getting shot or captured too. So yeah, those were my 2 big games since last time we chatted. How about you, Fernando? I heard you were at, quote, Tyler's store, right, Lazarus?
Yeah, but I didn't play, so it was just a Black Friday thing. But I'm aware that they are doing some Blood and Plunder Day in 2 weeks, so I may go to that one.
Oh, nice.
So there are also, I haven't played, but there are a couple of people that were introduced to Blood and Plunder by Tyler, and they are interested in playing again. So
Awesome.
I mean, the main issue is that only one of them has a starter pack, so they don't have enough minis. So I can provide, but we are still working out.
Yeah, that's always the difficult thing getting started, is getting everybody miniatures together.
Especially if you buy the starter pack, then you have to glue them all together. It takes a while.
Yeah.
Unless you're Dan, superhuman.
It's just speed paints, bro. I'm not superhuman.
I mean, gluing them together.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I
Gluing
glue
them.
sailors together
That's
with
what
my
you're
eyes closed
superhuman
now.
Yeah, and that kit is
Anybody
not
else
the
had some good
easiest
games lately?
of the sets. So, but if you do it enough, it becomes a little easier.
Becomes really fun.
Yeah. I think it's not my favorite kit, but it's definitely not my least favorite. I think natives are probably my least favorite of the kits.
I'm
they're
right
all
with you
they're all
there.
good. Like, I like them all, but natives is probably my least favorite kit.
That's the only one that I haven't done.
They're all like running in weird positions, and then making a guy hold a bow with an arrow at the same time is very challenging with multi-part plastic, and the bow arrows are so big because of the limitations
Of the
thing.
plastic,
So,
yeah.
not my favorite.
Having to glue every individual night blade onto the model.
And the
Yeah.
loincloth, yeah.
And you drop a loincloth and you never find it again, and then you have to form pants around a guy because you're like, well, I guess you're a maroon now. because I can't find the loincloth. This didn't happen to anybody. This is not a true
Theoretically
story at all.
Anybody else have some games lately? Shame or glory?
We've been kicking off our Escalation League over in my neck of the woods, and that's been going pretty well. I think we are up to 6 or 7 players now for round 2, and hopefully we get forces built for everybody. I expect what our plan is right now is on the 8th, which will be dating this recording a little bit, but this coming weekend, I'm hoping we will get to play a big multiplayer game, and then afterwards get in some Escalation League games. So that should be.
And you're playing Maroons
I
for
am
that,
playing
right?
Maroons for that.
How'd your first game go?
First game went well. A lot better than expected. I was able to the guy I was fighting was one of the more experienced players, but he picked a faction, I think, like me, that he was not experienced in playing. And I think the Maroons are a little bit closer to my normal play style, so I think that definitely helped me. It was I was really worried going into the game because it was 2 units versus, I want to say he had 4 or 5 units, and his units were smaller. But I was able to really start picking off units, and he was playing Cherokee, and he was playing all young braves with bows. And I was pretty much I was able to keep in cover and pretty much be impervious to bow hits. So I don't think I lost a man, but he was shooting at me quite a bit. So we were also, spoiler alert, we were also playing with the new Errata rules, testing those out. So
last time I played Guy with the Maroons versus Pirates once at like 100 points, I think, on land, and he did a 1 unit Maroon list.
1 unit.
With 100 points. 1 unit. And I had all these dorky pirates running around, and every turn he would kill one of my units of pirates, and he won.
That's amazing.
It was cool. And I was just shooting with like 4 or 5 guys at a time, and get 1 hit, and then he would save it, and then he would just
now did you try to go in and melee him at all?
Yep.
Okay. Still didn't work.
Punch me in the face coming in.
Speaking
of, I talked to Guy, and he's working on moving and a job chaos, but he hopefully be back, be involved in Blood and Pigment and my local scene soon. So we're really excited about that. He's been kind of tied up, and we really missed him, but his voice may be back at some point soon.
Yeah, we'll have him on the podcast sometime.
Yeah, he's the original guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was you and him originally, right? That started this whole thing.
I started solo, but he was the first person to help out. Yeah,
first to join.
And then Dan.
That's me.
You got any games, Dan?
I have not had a game. I think the last time I played was maybe the beginning of November, if that. And it was just kind of like a little pickup game. I was just testing some Adepticon lists. And then the entire month of November, my schedules were weird to sync up, and I have a small sect of players who are wanting to do some Necromunda, so they've been kind of doing that. And I took those days to prep minis.
You've been doing a lot of list building for Adepticon, though, haven't you? How many final lists have you made?
I don't want to talk about how many lists I've made. I've boiled it down to 2.
Took out 4 months to change your mind.
I know. That's the worst part, is I'm a planner.
That's good.
And one of those is a Juan Corso list?
Yes, the list is called Dan Corso.
I can't imagine you're going to pick that one.
Well, we'll see. I got a couple, but the potential for playing at night might really trip some people up.
Don't say too much. You're going to give away your secrets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tyler will just bring a giant light bulb and go, nope, it's day now.
the lighthouse rule.
Someone will bring a Gandalf mini and say it's the third morning of the I can't remember the line, but yeah, Gandalf will come up over a
Look to
shoal
the
with
east
the
on the
light
third
behind
day.
him. The another section we're doing is we are calling the Living History section, where we do reenacting, Ren fairs, anything like that that somewhat relates to Blood and Plunder. This past weekend, we were at the Texas Renaissance Festival. I think it's the biggest one in the U.S. I think I could be wrong, but it is so big that Disney apparently tried to buy them out 9 different times, and the owner said no. So that's how big it is. And we usually do this every year, where we drive out. I actually met my fiance there. We drive out. It's about a 4-hour drive from where we are, and then we camp out and we stay. We go out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're at fair, and then we leave Monday morning. And it is always a fantastic time.
Had your pirate outfit on?
Oh yes, I don't believe in going to Renaissance fairs in normie clothes. I think that's a sin that you get punished.
Never been to a Renaissance fair.
It is good fun. We mainly went this year for like the food, because the food is always great. They have the park split up into like the Kingdom of England, the Kingdom of Spain. They have a little German town. We spent most of our time in the Kingdom of Poland because they have the best food. And then they just added a whole new pirate area. So day 2, that's where we kind of went and hung out, because they have a new tavern, and it was great. I love going every year.
When you say big? How many people? Do you have any
The
idea what the
weekend
attendance is?
before, they broke a attendance record and had over 50,000 people.
50?
That's a lot.
Yeah, we're glad we were not there
gosh.
that weekend.
How long does this go? You said the weekend before. Is it a multi?
Yes, it is
how
it
many
goes,
days
I
is
want to say, from like September to, I want to say, the second or third week of December. It goes for months. It's
Oh my
huge.
goodness.
And every weekend has a theme. We went on, I think, we went on Highland weekend. So lots of kilts.
Wow, that's crazy. And do some people stay the whole time, or is it like a cycling?
I'm sure some people probably camp out the entire time. I want to know what they do for a living that allows them to do that, because I would like to do that.
Yeah.
But
Was there like vendors, or is it just like a camp
oh no,
out
there's vendors.
on the weekends
It's
now?
basically it's hard to explain because I don't want to draw comparisons to Disneyland, but it's very much so like Disneyland, where there's prefab buildings and there's a Golden Dragon, like Asian food place. I don't think there's an actual restaurant. There might be. If it is, I haven't been. That's how big it is. I've been going for several years and I haven't seen everything.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm glad you survived.
Yeah, but it is fantastic. I got myself all pirated up. I made sure to say hi to the King of Spain for you, Garrett.
Uh-huh.
And it's just I don't really know how to explain it. It's really fun. It's to the point where my immersion gets broken, because you'll always see somebody in like regular people clothes. I'm like, bro, you drove all the way out here. Just get a Halloween costume. Have fun. Live a little.
Renaissance fairs are wild places, like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're gonna get.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about what happens after the park after the park closes at 7 and there's just the campgrounds. We don't talk about that.
Probably wise.
Because it's crazy. I joined a fair group on Facebook today and immediately went, oh, this is not what I wanted, and hightailed out of there.
Oh my.
Like, oh, these are a little more than enthusiasts, I guess. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. If you have a local Ren fair, I highly recommend going and just, checking it out. But yeah, me and we have a whole group. We're working on becoming like a nonprofit kind of thing. We're called the Cross Cutlass Privateers. And it's kind of like our weekly pilgrimage, essentially. We all go out, we all hang out, we're all dressed in garb all day. It's fantastic.
Nice.
And then when the park closes, we sit around the fire, cook food, drink mead, and smoke pipes. It's great.
Got to get you out to St. Augustine sometime.
I desperately want
It's
to go.
basically the same thing. we do the reenactment, and then we just hang out and play games and sing songs afterwards.
We're thinking of trying to do a honeymoon in Florida, and that is on my list. So we'll see.
Definitely. There's a couple of dates that you can come. So, but we could talk about that off recording.
Should we peek behind the curtain?
I think we should. So this next segment is peek behind the curtain of Firelock development, and this will be this will be Joseph's segment a little bit. I'm involved somewhat, but I think this is Joseph's baby. He can kind of intro what he wants to talk about and talk about it.
Yeah, just some stuff that I've been working on, or all of us have things that we have been kind of helping out with Firelock. I don't know how to privatize their development, which means they just get people excited about it, so they do it for free, basically. But here's stuff that I've been working on. Still working on that war in Jamaica. That is probably the next Blood and Plunder thing coming out. Should be coming out in 2025. The Rise of the Buccaneers. It's going to be war in Jamaica, and then Christopher Mings and some of the earlier 17th century or mid 17th century Buccaneers. So doing reading that. Got some good books on that. We talked about that already, so we don't need to talk about that anymore. I've been helping out with some new minis, which already dropped on the Firelock website, which are awesome. Make sure to check those out if you hadn't already. There's Hostigadores, which have been in the game for several years without a devoted model. They look really spicy in Spanish. A new Spanish commander is coming out soon, which nobody has seen yet, so watch out for that. They don't. That would be a third generic Spanish, or it might end up being a legendary. And we got new pikemen. The original pikemen weren't the most popular. They're kind of spindly
Rejoice.
compared to the
Mhm.
Yeah, and they're going to be resin. They're a little more expensive because of their large footprint on the printer, I'm guessing. They have those long pikes, 9-foot lances, really. And there's some new filibusters, alternate sculpts coming up too. So I've been kind of advising a little bit, or at least just being a test person for those new miniatures. So watch for those coming up. I've been working on the Errata a lot, which we're going to introduce here in a second. Advising some on that and going through meetings and hammering out details. Very tedious and good, some fun. And then I just took a crack at going through the FAQ. The FAQ hasn't been updated for a long time either, so they're adding a good number there. Then had to go through and edit the old FAQ, delete some stuff, add some stuff, modify some stuff to match the new errata. So that was a delightful task. That's what I've been working on for Firelock lately. Dan, you working on something too?
Yeah, so I made a group for it, so I'm pretty comfortable talking about it. I was playing it kind of close to the chest, but I have written an expansion for Blood and Plunder that covers the Great Northern War. The war runs parallel to the War of Spanish Secession, and it involves Russia, Sweden, Poland, Lithuania, and Saxony. So that's basically been kind of a one-man project. Been writing and doing lots and lots of research, and I did the works cited section. I realized I read a lot of books on the subject, so I feel very confident. We just been testing that. The units are pretty much done, and things were tweaked with the errata we're going to be talking about, but units are done. We are just testing the scenarios, and we have about 4 more to go through. This week, we're going to be testing the Battle of Hogland, which took place between a Swedish ship of the line, which we're using a 6-rate to stand in for, and a bunch of itty-bitty little Russian galleys. And the goal for the Swedish player is to get underway because the wind had died and is now coming back, and is their goal to escape off the board without a bunch of angry Russians boarding them. They say it's a battle, but it was really more like a single day action that was inconclusive. But when I read about it, I thought the idea of a proper line ship desperately trying to get its sail set and get the hell out of there with a bunch of little itty bitty galleys rowing after it at top speed might be fun as a scenario. So that's why I picked it.
I love making scenarios. Just explore different parts of the game, try to represent what actually happened and make it fun.
Yeah, we got 4 historical scenarios and then 2 standard ones. There's going to be a Fort Siege scenario in there that we play tested to hell and is very, very fun. So if you have a Palisade fort and you're trying to come up with a game to play where you're just taking the fort, the final days of a siege, I have that for you. It's just waiting for everything else to get finished. It's a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm very proud.
Nice.
Are those going to be cross compatible with Blood and Plunder, you think, or
That is the goal. I would love for it to be official and tournament legal. We will see what the verdict is because I wrote it all. I basically really fine tuned it after Raise the Black came out because I started working on it before Raise the Black when I had the really early stuff. So that's what I kind of based it off of because it is 18th century. The really cool part though is I did revise the Swedish and Danish militia lists because they will have their own unique units. So that will also be in there. So we will see. I would love for it to be official. I think it's cross compatible because everything is designed in the spirit of. There's just more professional units that are expensive and small scale. So we will see, but I am crossing my fingers and toes.
Yeah, I was speaking specifically to your scenarios. If they were
Oh,
something
yeah.
that was
Oh, yeah.
generic enough that if you wanted to play it in the Caribbean or in North
Oh,
America,
yeah,
that you
absolutely.
could.
I've built these scenarios to where I'm trying to include, if it warrants it, little open play stipulations, but for the most part, if you want to play this Battle of Hogland with, a Spanish galleon trying to escape from a bunch of little buccaneers and canoas, you can do that as well. That will fit perfectly.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
In fact, it might be more fun because there's more unit variety, because I could only create so many line troops and so many guys on horseback. There will be hand mortars, though. I did have those done, and they are a lot of fun. You can launch a grenade a little further, but you cannot do it safely.
Nice.
Explosives. That leads into our next part of our next.
Did somebody say
segment.
segue?
All right, Blood and Plunder Errata. This is long in the works ever since they've been trying to get it out since spring. There's a couple things that they've been wanting to try to tweak, including swivel guns, and then Firepots were on the radar, and then the tournament at Adepticon put them squarely in the sights of Errata. So there's a couple important things that need to be changed for the balance and health of the game and the competitive scene. And then they wanted to carefully just go through the rule book and do anything else that really needed to be done or be healthy for the game for the next couple of years. So they had that revised edition printed about 2 years ago now, and it's time for just a fine-tooth comb and update. So that Mike has been behind most of this, and then Liam and I have been on kind of the board for helping out and helping writing new language if it needs it. So that's kind of how it's been working. We've been meeting every once in a while and hammering through. We had one meeting that was like 7 hours long. I was insane. Anyway, there's a longer list of things tweaked now. I think it's going to be really good for the game, but Errata is always a kind of unpleasant time for a lot of the community because things change a little bit and doesn't exactly match your rule book or your cards, which is annoying and nobody likes it. Mike, least of all, he hates it. He doesn't want to change anything if it doesn't have to be changed because of the complication it puts into the whole system. I've seen it happen on Star Wars Legion most recently. It's kind of insane. Almost all printed materials are useless now. I have to reprint everything, but they aren't going to reprint it for like 6-7 months. But this is not that. This is fairly small. This is just a few things, some things. And this is focusing specifically on the revised edition and rulebook, which is pretty much the same as the starter set rulebook. So that pretty much applied all the errata from before, those new rule books, except a couple things got overlooked, which are included in this errata, like tiny things that nobody really even noticed, but trying to be real careful. So there's a list of stuff we're going to look at, starting with the most important high-profile things. These hasn't been released as a recording of this, so there's a couple things that still have to be polished, and we aren't really going to touch on those or do a disclaimer here. We're hoping this segment can be a easy way to process some of the errata and give some of the experiences. All of us have been play testing a little bit behind the scenes and trying to make friends with it. So I'm eager to hear your guys' experience with some of these things. Firelock wanted to do a live stream with us at some point, which might still happen, and going through the errata as well, but we're just going to put this in the can right now.
Yeah.
That's the background. I'm going to try to step back and let you guys lead through the rest of it after that intro.
So first thing on the list is the infamous Firepots. Let's go through how those are changing. So, okay. As a poorly equipped Spanish player, I never really got to really play with Firepots to begin with. So, if I understand correctly, the way they worked before is you threw 3 dice per Firepot, and on 8s, they lit a fire.
I believe it was
On
10.
8+, they got hits, and then you roll a separate dice, and on a 7+, you start a fire.
7+, you start a fire. So it was just 1 die per pot, and on a 7+, it started a fire.
And then the pirates came out in raise the black, and they have one explosive for 4 models, so then you can get tons of fire pots on these 3-point models. And fire pots proliferated, and with how they work, if you have more fires than decks on a ship, your ship instantly blows up, and that became a problem. So they're getting nerfed, basically, or they're getting changed. All right, now fire pots, we explained how they did work. The change is you still roll 3 dice, you still succeed on 8+, but units save with their save number rather than 9+. So they're getting nerfed a little bit when it comes to making hits. They only cost 2 points each, so they're really cheap. And then you have to roll an additional d10 when taking a fatigue test. They're scary. Nobody likes getting burnt, turns out. So that's the main thing. They're going to scare people. A good thing to throw in and mess people up before you charge. And then after that whole attack is done, or actually, as part of the attack, if 2 10s or more are rolled during the attack, it starts a fire. So that's pretty unlikely on 3 dice. But if you roll more dice, it becomes more likely. But the intention is to not start as many fires, but to be more kind of terrorizing on the deck they're getting thrown. We did some research and couldn't find very many, if any, examples of fire pots burning a ship down. They would start localized fires on a deck, but they wouldn't necessarily rip through the whole ship as an internal fire would tend to do. So, really hard to start a fire on a ship, but pretty messes up your guys, and it could start a fire, which it has in my experience. First time somebody played this against me, they rolled 1 fire pot and instantly started a fire on my piragua, and then it blew up at the end of the turn. It was a disaster. All right, what do you guys think?
So I can already hear people saying, well, you still have the potential to abuse this with the pirate model because you can take so many fire pots. And I will say that that's probably going to be a large factor in an upcoming errata for that book specifically. So hold your horses. I think this is a good change in conjunction with possibly taking a look at the pirates as well. But if you exclude pirates from your thinking on this, I think it really does reduce the potential for abuse on lighting a ship on fire just from throwing a bunch of fire pots. I don't know if everybody else agrees with me on that statement, but
So bear with me, given that this is the first time really that I have read the errata. So in a sense, I am the voice of the listener. So how common would you say the strategy of throwing firepots was, other than being used by pirates?
not a whole lot
How were people using it?
that I can remember.
Yeah, because most of the regular sailors only get 1 per 8 models, so in most games, you're only going to get 1 fire pot. The pirates could take, I think if it's 1 in 4, in a 250 point game, that is 12 guys. So if my math is right, it would be 3 pots thrown per squad of 12, and they are dirt cheap.
Yeah.
So naturally, if you cram a bunch of them on a sloop, sail up, and just start yucking, chances are you're going to light a fire.
Okay. So now I don't want to be criticizing here, but wouldn't that mean that nobody would use firepots now anymore?
They're still good. They still work. They only cost 2 points.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're one of the cheaper explosives, and now that they add a lot of
The other mechanics.
fatigue to
Yeah.
it, I think that makes them better just to take as a one of in a unit.
Yeah, I would say their role has changed, if that makes sense. From
Yeah,
being
yeah.
Yeah.
I
fire
see.
starting mayhem, they're now a fatigue weapon essentially. Because you're still
Okay, I
hitting on
see.
8
I see.
ups the same as you were before. You're still rolling 3 dice, but you are now, instead of taking, being basically caught like a grenado where you're saving on 9s, you get your save, but you also roll additional fatigue.
See. So yeah, they have another role. Now let's see how people use them.
Resolve 6 units, beware.
Yeah.
Was that sort of what you were gunning for when this change was being made, Joseph?
This change went through a bunch of different drafts, and I'm really happy with this one. And there was a bunch of different things trying to balance realism and balance and not change very many things. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. But yeah, I love it. It's been working well. I think the save, getting the cover save, is more of a balance thing. They didn't explode. Oh yeah, I think I would have. There's argument made for no saves or saves. So I think the balance is good with the no saves, and I think they work more as they would historically, and that's a win. And they're balanced, and that's a win. And that's kind of where I like things to be.
It's more of a tool to freak people out and not actually to kill people.
Like bows.
Yeah, but yeah, the whole weird meta with just throw 27 Firepots on turn 1 and see if you can insta-delete the ship. That's just not a fun way to play the game.
It's not,
trying
yeah.
to make it not possible.
It's not fun for one person in a 2-player game, which is 50%. So,
but people like to make the rules work for them, which is how you play games, and that's why Errata has to happen sometimes. Stinkpots got a slight update too, but it's just a clarification on how you throw them. So I don't think we need to touch on them very much, but tiny adjustment on that paragraph as well. Should we move to Swivels?
yeah.
I'm a little more familiar with this one, so
This one's been kind of wanted for a while, and Swivels always already been errated once. Swivels get to shoot 3 dice and hit on 6+, and they benefit from artillery crew, which makes them pretty fast shooters. And then the rule has always been that you can shoot a 360-degree arc of fire, basically, from your deck section. So if you have 4 swivels in the back of your sloop, you can shoot 4 swivels to either side or to the back. It's getting updated. Swivels are becoming slightly less expensive, and you need to buy them in pairs instead of singly. And then, to balance that, you have to draw true line of sight from the swivel mount to your target without crossing your own ship. Pretty easy, real intuitive, but it basically cuts your swivel firepower in half most of the time. If you're coming in hot on somebody forward, bow first, you can shoot all your swivels at the ship if you're nice and square on it. But if you're kind of on a broadside using your big guns, you can't use the swivels on the opposite side. I think this is super helpful. I like this. I think it lets you, it makes muskets more viable. It is very effective to just lump a massive unit on 4 swivels and shoot them fast as you can. Boom, 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 boom. You can double fire in one turn, 24 dice with one unit. It's kind of kooky. So they aren't any worse. They're cheaper, and you only can fire half of them. So the balance is about the same per point cost, but you can't shoot. Your density of dice is just reduced. They're better as a defensive weapon, or as you can throw your unit on the cannons and your swivel guns and shoot them occasionally, but you can't pump out 12 dice every 3/4 of a turn. That's where they have landed. You guys tested this? What do you think?
I have not tested this specifically, but I think that's where this is going to go. I think you're going to see a lot less dedicated swivel lists. I think you're going to either see swivel lists with muskets, and even more so, I think you're going to see mixed artillery lists, like you were saying, where you have decks of your big guns on a ship along with swivels firing a deck broadside of artillery, and then reloading what you need to after that. You might not be, the swivels might be just a, like you said, a shoot whenever you can get them reloaded type thing, but or a shoot when you get in close enough for them to matter. Hold on to them until then, you know. But yeah, I really like this change too.
I am in that camp as well. I really like this change because there was definitely a balance issue where it was more economical to take the swivels than muskets, because you could, grab a bunch of sailors, grab a bunch of Zeliden or Sea Dogs, strip them of their pistols, put them on swivels, and now you basically have more firepower than a similarly sized unit like freebooters. I think that this really cuts that, and it makes muskets more viable. The swivels they aren't useless. You can still, shoot them, and if you want to get that massive swivel off the front, you have to plan for it, and it is a little risky because you are going to be pointed bow first. So I think it's more of a tactical choice now. But the Swivels, I think, again, their role may have changed a little bit to where they're really good for defensive fire now. If you got a unit on the back that's kind of shooting, that is still something you have to contend with. And shooting on a 6 is still pretty good.
Yeah.
I think this issue came to the forefront with the release of the plastic sloop that has 4 swivels in the front and the back, and that just kind of intensified how powerful the swivels can be, and it just kind of brought in a swivel meta where the best way to play a ship game is just buckets of dice. I know buckets of dice games have their place, but although I think this is a healthy move away from bucket of dice game, and I like it.
That was when I played in some of my first competitive tournaments. That's what I did, was I took those. Because I went to Adepticon and I didn't want to take a big ship with me. The plastic ship was very nice for that. And then the way you kit that ship out for competitive play is to throw the 8 swivels on there. That's like the best thing you can do.
Your list won the 2023
It
Adepticon,
did.
but you weren't playing it.
A
It was Swivel
I
Gun, and
think
then the other 2 players fighting for the top spot also played
Swivel
Swivel
list.
List. So that was the 2023 meta Swivel Mania.
Yep. So this has been kind of a long time coming.
Yep.
And since then, I've kind of moved away from swivels. I'm like, and I'll do that with like competitive games. I'll be like, okay, yeah, that's really good. Like I've done that.
Yeah.
Now I want to see if I can find something else that's good.
Yeah, it's fun to find things that work really well. Oh, I can make that work, and then it plays out similarly every game. And like, oh, time to try something new.
So the next topic of discussion is so those first 2, you could see those coming from a mile away. This next one, I don't think you'll probably have seen it coming. And I'll let you explain what the change is, Joseph, to shoot saves in general.
This is a very small change in the rulebook, but a pretty big change in the game, and it wasn't on my list of errata that I thought was needed for the game, but I think it is overall a fun and good thing, and it freshens up the game a little bit and opens up some realistic tactics that can, especially on land, that let you do things that you should be able to do. It's a big change, though. Shoot saves in the open have always been 9+ for any model, anytime. Barring other modifications, but instead of using their shoot save stat, they're just 9+ anything. It only says that like one place in the rulebook, which is kind of hard to find. And that place is being deleted, and it's being replaced with your shoot save in the open is your shoot save with 1 penalty.
A +1 penalty.
+1 penalty. So in the open, +1 penalty. In cover, you get your shoot save score vanilla, and then if you're in hardcover, you get a -1. So you have a -1, 0, and a +1 modifier. And in general, that's most models save an 8 in the open. If they have a 7 save, which is this average. Some models have a 6 save, so they save on 7 in the open, which is pretty good. And a lot of militia have an 8 save, which now they save on 9 in the open, which is same as it was. So it lets you move out into the open a little bit more and maneuver. Most models have a slightly better chance, but it's only by 1 for most models. Some it's a 2 better chance, 20% better chance of saving, and it does feel quite a bit different. But I've been playing it for several months now, and it's a lot of fun. It helps. It's not always doesn't make a difference all the time, but it does give you a little more confidence on actually moving your models instead of jumping behind the little grove of palm trees and sitting there the rest of the game. How have you guys? This is a big change, and it kind of came out of nowhere. It was Mike's impetus, and he's been working on it with using that rule for some other games he's been developing, and really wanted to move that direction here.
At first, I was kind of lukewarm on it when I first saw it. I think Mike explaining his reasoning behind changing it is really what won me over to it, and then also trying it myself. I've since tried it a lot, and I think it does exactly what he wants it to do, which is to help these high-cost models that I've probably said in the past that I think these high cost models have an issue sometimes with the fact that they die the same way as the lower cost models do. A lot of times, especially when you're out in the open, everybody died on a 9, and so I'm losing 8 points versus 3 points a model. That's a big difference. I can take
Swarm
I can
forces were
take
pretty.
the 3-point loss in a elite force. If I lose a model, that really hurts. And I think this just helps them a little bit because you're specifically buffing these models. Like I've been playing Maroons, and this is really helping Maroons because I have, 8 7-point models that now are saving on 7s out in the open. So I feel a little more confident maneuvering with these guys, knowing that I'll have a decent chance of saving them, even if I get caught out in the open. Versus before, it was like, well, I can't go out in the open because I'm going to lose these guys and I'm going to lose the game because I'm going to immediately die if I get shot out in the open. So,
Yeah.
I think it is a very good change, and it's something I think people are going to have to get used to, but I think it will work out in the end, and I think people will really like it.
In the control group, working on it and getting feedback on it, it was initially a universal negative reaction, but it was a universal, oh yeah, this kind of works. This is fun. This is good after some work with it. Almost universal. So I think that's a good sign. It throws you for a loop, just the idea of it, but it's super easy to play and it's super easy to explain to new players because it's actually linked to that stat card instead of being another number you got to remember. And it changes the game a little bit. It is going to help units it's going to change the meta a little bit. Those units that have a 6 shoot save, they're going to have a little more value there, but that value is already calculated into their cost.
Yeah.
But they don't get that value when they're out in the open. So it just makes the open a play space. And part of the reason for that too is we see a lot of boards, pictures of boards from Summer on Plunder, and Mike looked over those, and a lot of people don't use very much terrain. And if you're just shooting each other across a grassy field with 2 pieces of terrain on your 3x3 board, you're dying a lot. So having being able to move between cover and not just sit there makes the game more dynamic and interesting, especially for objective kind of games. A lot of games, I'm monologuing again, here we go. But if there's an objective, half the time you ignore it and you just kill the other guy, because if you kill them, they can't do an objective.
Right.
So you just want to sit there and not get killed. So you just
stay in cover,
hide. So that's no fun. Yeah. Which is good not to die, but having a game that actually changes and moves and has some tactics to it is also good.
Yeah, and some of the points, some extra points that were made, was don't think about, because this is what I thought originally was, that 9 save represents just a guy standing out in the field, and a guy standing out in the field, no matter what he is still just a guy standing out in the field. So you can hit him. So it's kind of shifted from the ability for your unit to kill a guy to your unit's ability to shrug off minor hits, I think would be a good way, or the ability to use cover that's all over the board. I guess you can think about it as your entire board is a little bit of cover, and then your main cover pieces are a lot of cover. So there's almost like 3 different levels of cover now.
Maybe even, yeah.
There's like light cover, and then heavy cover.
I think it also represents the different ways that men fought and moved. A unit of English militia is just going to move in a blob. They don't have a lot of experience. They don't drill very much. They just move as a blob, and they try to keep close together, maybe. But a unit of Hostigadores is used to skirmishing. They're going to be in a skirmish line. They're going to And then a unit of Indians. They're going to be running close to the ground. They move differently across terrain, even if it is a flat marble surface.
Yeah.
Represents that too.
Yeah, and I think I think it may even add a wrinkle into like a resolve value as well, because I think it was somebody was talking about it, like a militia unit. If you're being shot at, one of these guys may just start running, and so you just count that as a casualty, you know. So
Or if he gets a minor wound, he's
yeah. He
never
just
had
gets
to deal with
nicked,
that
and
kind
he's
of thing
like, "I'm
before, and
down.
he's
I'm
like,
done. I'm
I'm
out
out
of
of
here."
here. Where if a British regular got hit,
It's just a flesh wound. Yeah, it's
just keep going. A lot of factors and balance factors in there,
Yeah.
but different ways to think about it. Have you played this, Dan? You have, right?
Yes, we have. It made some of my Northern War stuff a little easier to build for because, there's not a lot of cover on battlefields, so it really did help. I will admit, I'm a big boy. I had a negative reaction to this because my fear was that a lot of the Frontier Native factions are now basically going to be running around the open, almost immune to resolve and shooting because they all have pretty good shoot saves. But I was, again, Mike mentioned everything, and apparently a look was taken, and nothing needed to be changed because the value is already there. So I warmed up to it. I think that it does give a good balance to, again, more expensive units because it almost makes them a little more viable to take, because the last thing you want to do is take, a 8 point, grenadier, and then he gets shot in the open by, a militia, and now you've lost that expensive model to a 9-up save.
Yeah.
I was playing a fun game of Capture the Surgeon. I had my vanguard of roundsmen. I was playing Blackbeard run forward to grab that surgeon, and I felt really good. I had a 6 shoot save, only saving on 7s out in the open, and these lame little English militia walked up to me and shot me in the face. 5 hits, 7 models, and I failed every single one, still saving on 7s. And then I said, all fortunate, I'm sure to save some, and I failed them all again, and they were all dead. And I lost my surgeon, I lost Blackbeard. So even if it's 6 shoot save, you're not immune.
Yeah, it's still risky going out into cover. It's just a lot less risky.
And again, I'll admit it was definitely a knee-jerk reaction, but I think that it's healthy for the game. I think that, again, it bakes in more value, and I am much more open to it now than I was initially.
I think the knee-jerk reaction we had was to the change itself coming out of nowhere. Like I said, I think once I got the explanation from Mike, I was fine with it because there was purpose behind it. Originally, when I read it, I was like, "Why are we doing this? It works fine the way it is. Like, what's
If it ain't broke, don't fix it."
exactly?" But I think when Mike came through and talked about what his purpose was behind the change, I was like, "Okay, yeah, that all makes sense, and this will probably be fine."
So I haven't played with it, so my opinions are not based on experience, but just on some thoughts. Which I don't know. Just like you, I I like the way it was before. I think it was peculiar to Blood and Plunder, but I can see why it can be annoying. Well, not annoying, kind of difficult to learn for someone used to the regular way of thinking about shoot save. Now, having said that, I do see some factions like the soldiers, like the one that where I won at Adepticon. They may be stronger now, just because I can go into the open with a little bit more impunity, and I already have a good shoot save.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was part of the reason, is to let regulars have a bit of a chance to fight the way they really did. Because right now, the best way to use a regular is to put a local guy on him, have him run around and jump in cover, but not to stand up and actually
Uh,
fire in volleys and the way they would have fought. So this gives them a little bit of option.
So I mean, to me, it's okay because the strategy that I like is to go and do a charge. So it's for me, it's a good
Fire
switch.
and impale. Yeah. And those are some of those heavy point cost models that are just, if your enemy just focuses fire on your 50, 60 point unit and just kills it with their mob of 3-pointers, limits what you can actually competitively bring in the game. So this helps that a little bit.
Okay. Moving on. I think we got everything out for that.
I think these are the big ones. The rest of them, I think, are just little tweaks here and there.
Yep, those are the remarkable ones. Some of the special rules are getting changes, just little tweaks. Some of them are nothing really changed at all, or a corner case. First is delay tactics. Delay tactics, you probably don't know what it does because it's been so bad that you don't use it. This is a commander ability. You can spend a command point to try to negotiate with your enemy's commander, and if you spend a command point within 12 inches and you roll a 7 or higher, the opposing commander can't use its command point for that turn. Very difficult to pull off because you have to be close to each other, and you have to take a command point, and you have a 40% chance of success and a 60% chance of failure, and you have to do it before the enemy uses their command point. All of those make it very difficult to use. Instead of using a command point now, it's just being changed to a free action. So it's no penalty for trying. So it'll get used a little bit now. I think it's a fun thematic thing. It's a fun gameplay thing, but it wasn't really viable, and this should make it viable. So at least try. Free actions. It does not take a command point, just a free action now.
Yeah. I think that's good. That gives the Spanish commander something to do because I think we talked about the Spanish commander rule list is
I
kind
really
of
like that. Yeah, I think that rule. I've never really considered using that rule before. I think I will really be excited to try that in the future.
You don't build a list around that, but it's a fun thing to do, and
Yeah,
it's a fun thematic thing too. Like
just something to try.
Commanders yelling at each other. And it did really happen too.
Yeah.
Any reactions, Fernando?
No, I have the same reaction as Garrett. Really, I need to think a little bit more about what we can do with it in terms of how useful. I mean, yeah, it's so. I do think there's one commander that has it that I really like. I don't remember his name right now, but now I guess it's just a bit fun, a bit a variable that makes it a little bit more fun to play.
The next two special rules.
Yeah.
Dan, did you talk about that one? Delay tactics. Any comments? Okay. All right, I forgot. Sorry. Next two things are just actually
I did. I gave my 2
corrections.
cents.
The errata from 1.1 or 1.3 got not applied in the rulebook. So drilled, it needs to be clear that to get the benefit, you have to use a musket or a carbine of some sort, not pistols or other things like that. Poorly equipped, this is errata from 1.1 also. It doesn't apply to artillery, just small arms, and that was just incorrectly printed in the rulebook, so that's just a little cleanup there. It didn't start out that way. The first couple of years, it applied to cannons, and it actually really hurt. I remember that the English have their export artillery crew and their hearts. They're reloading so fast, and I'm sitting there with 5 reloads on my club and feeling sad. So I think that was a balance thing. The Spanish did reload slower in general from historical references I've seen, but
So I do remember one of the Blood and Pigment old videos about it where you stress
it
that
does or
it does
doesn't?
apply to artillery. That's why I started playing it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it used to, and then I got
That
switched.
I mean,
and then
in
it just
that
got
video, I
printed
remember
wrong,
that
so
you said that it did.
But yeah, it's not a change unless you were reading really closely and not looking at the previous errata. Next one is kind of a big one too, and that is the motivated special rule, also a commander rule. This has been a kind of a crazy rule. Only 1 or 2 commanders had it in the original publication, and then a couple more of them had it in Raise the Black. And it is really fun. When you give a command point, you can take a point of fatigue to give whoever you're giving command points 2 actions instead of 1. Super fun. But it has all these questions like, can they do a dedicated action, 2 dedicated actions, 1 dedicated action with 2 things? And there's no limit on it. So the new errata is you only can do it once per activation. So if you have 3 command points, and you only can use 1 of your command points to double rather than 3. And then some further clarifications on how motivator works are in the FAQ as far as dedicated actions or whatnot. But the main thing is you only can do it once rather than a bunch of times, which is good. So you got to think how to use it.
Right.
There's a Dutch commander in Raise the Black that has 3 command points and motivated, so he could give out 6 actions on his, which is crazy. You can rally in between giving those command points out. So
Granted, it does cost fatigue, but it's still silly.
For sure. Moving on.
Okay, and then Sailing Master, like we said before, that's not really a rule change per se. That's just a clarification for a rule as intended versus rules as written type thing.
May only benefit under sail power, not sweeps. You can't use your Sailing Master to make your guys row faster. That's it.
This one's kind of a big change, this next one.
Skirmishers?
Yeah.
Skirmishers on a harder spade, you shoot or charge. If you've already moved, you can take a free move back to where you started. So you could move, shoot, and then move back for free. Or charge and then skirmish away for free. And it's getting the slight change. I don't think this will matter to almost anybody, but it is important because of bad people like me who abused it. The new phrase is the enemy, the active unit may not perform any further charge actions during this activation. It's basically prohibiting double charges. So you can run up, guy has 2 fatigue, you charge him, and then you can skirmish out. Or if he had nothing loaded, and then you can charge him again. And that's not, it lets you attack twice, which is usually hard to do. You usually have to do a command point to do a dedicated fight once you're in melee. And then it also lets you use your special rules like hard chargers, bonus to charge but not to fight, or thrown weapons, reroll all fails in a charge but not a fight. So all those things were just kind of piling up into these very deadly charges and then charge again and just wipe a unit instantly without the other player being able to respond. And it's not really realistic. People wouldn't disengage, only to re-engage immediately. So it was unrealistic and it was super powerful, and only bad people like me were doing it.
Yeah. I did it 2 or 3 times. I mostly did this with cavalry, actually.
The cavalry would run through a unit but not turn the horse around
cavalry,
and move back and then charge again 20 feet. So cavalry can optionally disengage, but they wouldn't really skirmish that way per se.
Well,
any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it will nerf a lot of units that could be manipulated in list building to really take advantage of that. So you'll have to.
This is all the sneaky units like natives and maroons and black carrots and stuff.
Units that can get veteran and skirmishers and everything like that. So
special rule pile up.
Yep.
So I don't think it was overused, mainly because
it is. I think it's also a field bad
off, but it's kind of, you need to know how to play
for the other player because it's not super realistic to do that. And so when you tell somebody that you're about to do that, you're like, if you're on the receiving end of that, you're like, really? You can do that? Okay. I don't get any say in this. You're just going to charge me twice? Cool.
Yeah, ouch. It's not how skirmishers are.
Yeah.
Anyway, just limiting that corner case insta-kill thing.
Okay, get ready to clutch your pearls, English players.
Right, English players, my bucket for your tears is ready.
All right, tough. Tough has been tweaked before. Tough is a powerful rule that lets you just take off a point of fatigue after you activate if you didn't gain any fatigue during that activation. And it's being changed pretty substantially. Same idea, but instead of an automatic removal of fatigue, you get to do one rally test with a 1d10. So it's a 50 or 60% chance of removing that fatigue instead of 100% chance. some forces, like the British Royal Navy, have tough on all their sea dogs and militia, and it's just really good. You can push, especially artillery focused units lists that try to stay far away. They don't take a lot of fatigue anyway, so they can push one turn and then push tough with no real penalty. So making it something you have to calculate your chances rather than 100% chance makes it more interesting, and it brings the power level down a little bit and helps keep fatigue as part of the game instead of eliminating it as a factor. If you can have your grizzled veteran, you're very inspired and you're tough and everything.
Yeah. I think it also does a good job of separating the rules a little bit as far as like tough and like unwavering, and what was the other one like that?
Indomitable.
Indomitable. It makes those unwavering and indomitable rules a lot better and more sought after, I think.
And it doesn't change the value of some things like very inspiring and vendetta. In fact, it helps. It's really good with vendetta because you get to re-roll one failed dice. So vendetta will help every single tough. Very inspiring will help every single tough. So those things are still valuable, but tough is just not 100% ace in the hole every time.
Right.
But that hits a lot of units on several factions. So.
Yeah. So would you say now on, the Grizzle Veteran would not be an automatic
I hope so.
add-on to your force anymore?
I
Because
think
of
it
the change?
They already
already.
have it
I
cost.
think it already was not an auto include with the
So that
increase in
wasn't
price. I still think it's pretty good just because you get that extra command point, and if you
okay.
don't have a commander
I
with a
mean,
lot of command points, throwing one in there for an extra rally now and again is still really good. But yeah, I definitely don't see it being an auto include anymore.
That grizzled veteran might get retouched on his costing too.
Yeah.
The plan is to go through errata on each book systematically to make sure it's all in a good place over the next 6 months. So I don't know. It hasn't been discussed, but it's possible since it does change his value. Final special rule. We got to keep this moving, don't we? Terror. This is, I don't think, a big change. Just helpful for multiplayer games. Terror makes all enemy units take a fatigue test before the game starts. What happens if you're playing a 6-player game and all 3 enemies have terror? Do you have to do 3? No. Clarification is this can only apply to your force once per game. So if your musician had terror, which that's already explained, and if your commander had terror, and if your teammate had terror, all the enemy units would only do 1 anyway. That's it.
it should be every
automatic fatigue every turn, like tough on steroids reversed.
Terror cancels out tough.
Yeah.
It's spooky.
Everybody gets terror and everybody gets tough now.
All right, so that was the special rules. Again, lots of nice little tweaks in there. I guess next we have some scenarios, which I'm really excited for because it was a big gripe from me, especially when trying to build. And for tournament lists, I felt like a lot of the scenarios, if you were planning on being the attacker and you ended up being the defender, you were very much so downwind, and that made especially I think boarding lists that weren't in boats a little difficult to get up there. And these scenarios, I think, help kind of balance things a little better. You want to go ahead and go into that, Joe?
Sure. This is pretty light touch, but I think it's good for competitive scene, especially 2 sea and scenarios, getting a slight change in setup. Encounter at sea, getting a little bit of a change. Right now it's facing each other. A beam with your ship within 4 inches, I think, of the board edge. It's getting changed a little bit. You have a little more space to deploy, 16 inches, and you don't have to be a beam. So you can change your ship a little bit, and you have to be touching the board edge. So there's a little more space between ships, a little more options for setting your ship up, but you're still kind of facing each other more or less. But this scenario specifically, if you take a 6th rate or a galleon, you're already halfway across the board. So backing the ships up a little bit, putting some more space, gives lists some more options if they're faced with a boarding list, and giving players a little more choice on how they set up I think is good. And then final one is
Control the field.
Control the field at sea. This one was a bit problematic. The attacker is upwind, 24 inches away from the defender. The defender has to be at the bottom of the board, and they have to fight their way all the way across the board to control the field. And the attacker could just sail straight upwind and never engage, and it gives the defender a strike point, and they win without playing the game, which isn't very fun. So, get changed a little bit. Instead of the attacker being 24 inches away, straight upwind, and the defender just being way downwind and having to fight upwind, it's just reducing that deployment advantage. So, and to a very small margin, actually, the defender gets a 12-inch slice of the bottom of the board where the wind is blowing towards, and the attacker just gets 16 or 20. I think it's 16, but you'll see it in the errata. It might still change from this moment of recording, but I think a 16-inch should have like a 4-inch advantage, and all ships have to be deployed facing windward. So you have to deal with that wind. You got to decide if you're going to turn and give up the windward advantage and try to shoot your guns, or if you want to try to fight across the wind or turn away and try to flee upwind, but there's some more choice and it's not as disparate setup positions. And you can't just run away and win.
Right.
So it can be more competitive.
We actually tested
And-
this, and I was in a 6 rate, and Martin was in a sloop, and I was the attacker, and I still had to fight to keep him downwind of me. So I think that was really good. I think it was a good change.
Good. Yeah, I got some really interesting games out of this. Partly because I wanted to try different things with it, but every game was really interesting. So hopefully,
Also, this is your public service announcement. Read the advanced maneuver section of your rule book.
Yeah.
It's the number one most neglected, in my opinion, because I get to do stuff that people go, "Wait, where is that?" And I'm sitting there like, "It's right there. You got to read
Attack, where box hall.
it."
Know your maneuvers.
You have not lived until you box hauled into a boarding action.
Ah.
So I must confess that I have not really read completely because I almost always use both. So yeah, I really don't care about advanced maneuvers. I have my sweeps.
Sweeps. A slight errata on sweeps. Sweeps are powerful. They cost quite a bit because you have to have a unit on them. You get to ignore the wind and just chug around the board however you like. There's a slight change now in a size 2 ship or more when you're using sweeps.
So no boats.
If you're going, no boats are affected. If you're rowing to windward or in the wind's eye, anything not large. If you're moving 3 inches or more, your unit on the sweeps has to take a fatigue test. It's actually a lot of work to row a ship, and rowing against the wind, there's still a lot of resistance against the body and mass system of the ship. So it's difficult to go upwind. Just reading about that with Ned Lowe, one of his battles, they were just rowing upwind, and it was tons of work, and they couldn't do it all the time. So it gives your guys on the sweeps something to do. But if you do, you don't want games where people just take sweeps, sail straight upwind, and don't play the game. Again, errata tries to address things that make the game not fun. So this makes you think about just sailing straight upwind with sweeps rather than doing it with impunity. You can still sail up to almost 3 inches upwind with no penalties, so it's not that. But ships that can go really fast, this kind of hits the Spanish corsairs a lot. So what do you think about this? Actually, not if you're in a piragua, but if you're in a barco luengo or a sloop, you get that bonus to your sweeps value. But now you're going to have to work for it a little bit.
Hello, this is editor Dan. So, no joke, the day after we recorded this podcast, the finalization of the errata was done, and there was a slight change to sweeps, which we are currently talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and just read that and go from there. So, while moving under sweeps, if a size 2+ ship starts its move to windward or in the wind's eye and moves more than 2 inches, the unit assigned to the sweeps will gain 1 point of fatigue after the move is completed. If this would cause the unit to become shaken, the ship may only move up to 2 inches per activation. So that is where it is now. Please note that it is a size 2+ ship, so your boats are currently still safe. And paddles do not apply because you are not assigned to the paddles. that is all. We will go back to the podcast.
So yeah, the Barco Luengo was kind of disappointing. So I still think that the best strategy is to use pirawas.
But even if
So
you did it for
yeah,
3 turns in a row, you have to
it
take 3
doesn't affect
fatigue
the Spanish
tests
percent.
on a.
And I've never
Usually you
tried
have
with
5
the
resolve, so you might get 1.5. You're going to get 1.2 fatigue, even if you're sailing straight up wind. So it's definitely not the end of the road for the Barco Luengo. It's just the guys might get tired if you push them to go really fast, and you might need to go a little bit slower if your guys are already tired. And I think that's a good choice in the game, and it's a good thing to consider, and it's realistic too. So.
It also makes it easier to shake those guys off the sweeps, which was my big complaint, still kind of is, but now you're just going to have to make sure you manage that fatigue a little better. That means those command points might be going to your rowing crew to make sure they keep the fatigue off.
And you might have to activate them earlier and actually pay attention to them rather than activating them last in the turn because they don't matter.
Right. Yeah, it just adds. That's one of the things that I like about C games is some
Yeah.
of the management you have to do with all of your units, and it just adds to that with with the sweeps on ships. And so I like this change. It's like you said, I think it's more realistic. I don't think it nerfs anything terribly, but it does add some decision making and some management to the game. So I like it.
It doesn't hit very many ships either.
No.
Feel a little bit targeted toward the Barco Luengo. It wasn't meant to be, but the Tartana is another ship that can kind of just sail away from a game if it doesn't want to play, which is not fun.
Apparently, Mike was really tearing people up with Barco. That's where this.
Yeah, I think
all
he
came
said,
from.
and I quote, he was doing some unholy shenanigans that would reduce his player pool because nobody wanted to play with him.
Uh-oh. All right, we're down to some of the quick and interesting but not huge changes. Some welcome additions here, I think. Should we hit the field carriages?
Yep.
Field carriages. There wasn't very many field carriage cannons chugging around in the New World during this era, but they're almost too expensive to use. They aren't very fun because they're so expensive and they just get knocked out too easy. So their cost is going down. 5 points now for a
Swivel
gun, 7 for a light cannon, 10 for a medium cannon, 13 for a heavy cannon, which is about 4 points decrease on average.
The 3 field carriage
Hopefully
fans rejoice.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I like the idea
Yeah.
of trying
I
to
think
do it.
I think it's the
but it has
combo
never
of it not being
been that
super
great.
historically accurate and the fact that they weren't that good that's kind of kept me away from them. They're just they're kind of a scenario thing for me. I would never put them in a list that I built or a competitive list. But if that's your thing,
Yeah.
they're cheaper now. So
They're fun. They look cool on the board. They're fun to move around, and they give a totally different kind of play style where you can use that solid shot to blow somebody's head off or use grape shot. And they're more static. You have a lane of fire that you can kind of lock down one part of the board. But it's nice to be able to actually use them without feeling like you're dumping points down a hole.
Yeah. I think that's one of my biggest issues with new players sometimes is if a store has field carriages before they consult with me, they'll sometimes buy them and then I have to just gingerly explain to them that they're not that great. Because your first thought is
fun.
like, "Oh, I can bring a cannon on land.
It's gonna be scary.
This is gonna be awesome." It's like, well, no, not really. Fun is what you make it, but they're not that great in the game.
Another artillery related chain shot and grape shot. They're going to be purchasable for 1 point for the both of them rather than 1 point for one or the other. So just cheaper access to these fun alternate loads for artillery. Chain shot's not that great, but it's fun to shoot people's rigging. But do you really want to spend a bunch of money if you might not use it very much? But if you get them both at the same time, then you have options the whole game.
I mean, with the new control of the field, it might actually be viable to go after their rigging.
It's fun. I've done it.
Yeah. I think it's a good change. I think
Me too.
Having the alternate ammo types more widely available will possibly open up some new strategies that people have not thought about in the past. So I think that's a good change.
You're gonna put chain shot in your one light cannon on your Piragua now, Fernando?
No, but maybe in the Barco Luengo, now that swivel guns are a little bit worse. So yeah, I think it makes some more strategies more viable now.
I've got to get my Barco on the table because that's originally what I was going to do was do grape shot on those mediums.
One more artillery related thing, and this is a corner case that only bad people do.
Got to try that.
Which I have done. Not too bad. It works. Well, here it is. If you abandon artillery, or if you're midway through reloading and your unit becomes unassigned, those artillery pieces go up to full reload status, so 4 reloads. Doesn't happen very much, but there's some ways you can try to get maximum effort out of your cannons by loading, abandoning, and then have a commander put another unit on them and load, shoot. You can squeeze a little more value out of a artillery list by having crews jump in and out of servicing a cannon, which is not realistic at all.
And this penalizes putting a new unit on, correct? If your unit gets shaked off the cannons that they were assigned to, does that mean that will now go up? That will now go up to 4?
Yep. That only happens in melee. If you're shaken and just go prone, you stay assigned. But if you get driven off of, or you get involved into melee, then you do go up. So if you had your cannon halfway through the loading process, and then you come back to it, or a new unit comes in, where is the cannon in this process? Does it have powder? What's going on? It would take a while to sort it out. So for balance and realism.
Yeah, I think what made that strategy so good was getting those early shots and getting the chaos on the other ship going. Because it kind of falls apart as the game goes. Like, you can't just keep doing that because you
Right.
lose. Like the math doesn't work out all the way through the game. But those early rounds where you could shoot twice, whereas your opponent couldn't shoot at you. Like, you could shoot twice as much as your opponent at your opponent. It would put you ahead of the curve on the damage race and the critical hit race and all of that stuff. So it would set up your next turns to be good turns as well, because your other player is dealing with leaks, fires.
It was a legal rules exploit, and it kind of threw things. So now you can't do it, or you can do it, but it doesn't work very well. So don't do it.
Yeah.
Collisions got a little bit of a touch up in the rule book, just to prohibit bumper car effect happening. Some meaningful changes there, but I don't think we need to go through them with a magnifying glass. But if one ship would move another ship and it would hit another ship, instead of doing that chain effect, that one ship will stop in between them. And a slight and then update on the language as far as where the damage happens if your ship collides and you get damage. So read it, but I don't want to go through it piece by piece. It's not really groundbreaking. Is that okay? Yeah.
Not a huge change.
Speaking of good change. Speaking of good change, characters.
Huh?
All right.
Yeah, characters.
Yeah.
Everybody's favorite actually situation.
Updating some language. I think to bring it back to where the intention of original characters were, but the wording in the past has been a character does not count towards the maximum size of a unit. Different size of games, you have different maximum size of unit. 100 points, you get up to 8 men. But if you put a character in it, you could make it 9 men because he doesn't count. Why? We don't know. It felt a little bit exploity. It wasn't a big deal because 8 or 9, it's not that big a difference. But people like to exploit it. And that's how Guy got his 100-point unit. He just kept putting characters in it, as many as he could, to try to make it this massive unit we talked about earlier with the Maroons. And it felt kind of silly, and it caused issues. People thought the force builder was busted, it didn't work properly, and all sorts of things like that. But there's no reason for that. The real intention was that that hostage and advisors shouldn't count towards your unit cap because they're not contributing to the unit in the same way. They aren't using a musket, so they would be kind of a weight on the unit. It couldn't make your unit as big as normal if they were with it. So now that's been reversed. They do count towards your max size, but hostage advisors don't. So you can do your unit of 8 plus your commander plus your hostage advisor, but if you put a grizzled veteran in there, he still counts as part of the up to the 8. You can't do a 9th fighting guy. I don't know if that's clear or not, but if you haven't thought about it before, you don't need to think about it. It's just a kind of I could do this. Why? No, we can't.
Not anymore. I think you could squeeze a little bit of extra efficiency out of your lists by doing that in the past. So I do think it was valid, but I do like the clarity of this a lot better, where it's like, okay, yeah, you add the character, treat it as a sea dog.
Yeah.
End of discussion.
They don't count.
What about commanders?
Do not count, yeah. Okay. And
Actually,
then some unit point changes? Or no, unit option
this
changes.
is 90% sure. So Dan might have to delete this. I don't think so. Les Enfants Perdus and Forlorn Hope. Those are original units, like high cost units, really good. But they do everything and they cost a lot. And they're boarding party units specifically, but they also have a musket and they have pretty much no unit options besides veterancy, and they get the free grenades. So they're getting a unit option to bring them maybe into play a little bit more, let them do their boarding thing at a cheaper cost. The French version specifically has been never sees playtime because of their bad shoot and fight saves. So the plan is to give them an option to reduce cost by 1 to drop their muskets. So they become brace of pistols and explosives without the musket. That would bring the French down to 5 points each and the English Forlorn Hope up to 6 points each. They have great stats other than that shoot save and fight save. And they got great weapons. But yeah, now you can just bring the French guy for 5 points. He has tough, which isn't as good. 4 resolve and brace of pistols and explosives for free for 5 points. You can keep him prone on your deck and still save at a reasonable number, and then jump into melee, and you either win gloriously or die gloriously. And that's kind of what they were supposed to do. That's what they really did. You got the option. Maybe it's worth it to you at a cheaper cost without the musket.
I think this is going in a good direction for them, but I still think those guys, the French guys especially, are trash.
How's it feel knowing your 5-point model is just as durable as a 3-point English militia?
It's rough. It's rough. All right.
Dead by 21.
With brace of pistols.
Well, 2 more points for a lot of more stats on weapons.
I'm going to be like, damn, you could have just brought Marines.
Well, that's about the same cost, so that's perfect.
Yeah. But no, I do think this is a step in the right direction. Like it gets better. Like it's getting better. It's getting there. It's better than not doing anything to them. So
which is good. I've always been the voice of I really think that giving units more options, especially the older units, kind of brings them more into line with the newer stuff. So this is an option, and I think that is good.
All right, and finally, some clarification on strike points.
Strike points, there's the whole list of stuff that give you strike points at the end of the rulebook in your reference sheet. Some of the wording was a little bit unclear, so that's just got to update to make it a little more clear and easy to understand. No big changes. It just incorporates the fortification stuff. And then there were some questions. It says, if a ship is reduced to half sail, 1 ship or all the ships. Let me just look at that wording really quick here. Fortitude of the value of and it also said the fortitude or value of the hull or the rigging has been reduced. Does that mean you get 2 strike points if they're both or not? So those have been split out into separate bullet points, so it's nice and clear. It would be a strike point for each one of those, hull or rigging. Yeah. And then this is a kind of a weird one. At least one of the force's ships, not boats, has been lost by capture fire or sinking. It only counts once. Ship games can get kind of weird where a bunch of these things can all happen to the same ship, and then you get this massive number of strike points. It's clear you're going to lose. You did lose, but then for tournament play, it kind of stacks up really quickly, and it throws the balance of when you have people have won the same number of games. If you try to carefully destroy the enemy in a very meticulous way to satisfy all strike point options, you can kind of game the tournament a little bit. So this is just clarifying that it's if you get a strike point if you've captured one of the ships, but not for each one, because you're already getting strike points for having men on their deck and things like that. So just a slight update to the wording to make it nice and clean for tournament play.
Yep.
And then
So one thing to add to this that I mean, it has worked in my favor, but it's kind of sketchy is that given that I play with boats, so I don't have any ship, so they cannot capture any ship, but I can. So my enemies always are kind of at disadvantage.
yeah, boats are weird like that, but if you ram them, they suck. So good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some disadvantage baked into them a little bit.
And then it still does count. A deck on the force's flagship is currently occupied by at least one enemy unit. The flagship can be a boat if you have no other ships, but it cannot be a boat if you have a deck, a 2 or more deck ship. And that is an easy thing to miss too. You could just, otherwise, unpleasant person could make their flagship with their commander at the very other end of the board with a tiny rowboat and just be rowing upwind to never get attacked and just do whatever he wants with other ships. So your boat can still give you a strike test if it's your flagship, a strike point rather.
That's a good idea. I will do it.
No.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's the book, the rule book specifies your flagship cannot be a boat unless you have nothing but boats in your force.
Okay.
And final strike point, the language was very unclear or just used incorrectly. It says strike points are cumulative and determined at the end of each turn. No, it didn't say they are not cumulative. You recalculate them at the end of every turn. You don't get a strike point for the 25% dead at end of turn 1. And then into turn 2, you still have those same dead. You don't get another strike point piled on top. You don't keep throwing strike points in buckets that never go away. I keep adding up. You just look at where your force is. You compare it to this this list every turn, recalculating for anything that's happened. But you don't keep adding strike points for everything to a ever increasing tally. So just clearing up that wording.
Yep. Yeah, that was always a weird wording on that made people think that you, like you said, just kept throwing on those strike points and they just accumulated as the game went on.
Yeah.
So
And that's kind of what it said, which was just bad wording. Now it says strike points are determined at the end of each turn, resetting any previous totals, to be very clear.
right. Yeah, it's calculate them up every round like it's a brand new round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And recheck. So I think that's everything.
There's a couple other things that are
And
just tiny wording things that weren't a big deal that we just ignored. But it'll all be in the document releasing on Firelock's website in the first week of December. Fingers crossed.
yeah, and if you're reading this and if you've not seen the document, go check it out on their website because I don't think we're going to try not to post this until the document is out. So
My bucket is ready for all those
go
sweet,
check it
sweet
out.
English tears.
Pour over it and lament your loss of Tough.
Ha ha ha.
Ha 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 ha. So does anybody have any good announcements?
Probably too late, but Black Friday sale is on for Firelock, which is awesome. 30% off till December 9th. This might not come out till right about then, but good luck. And there's all those new minis you talked about already. Hostigadores, Pikeman, the Dead Dread Pirate, Objective Token, the Surgeon, the Command, the 18th Century Commander, the Priest, and the Master Gunner characters are all available, which is awesome for Firelock.
Yeah, all really cool models. I'm glad that they've got the priest out there now. So
And that 18th century commander, he's on all the cards for Raise the Black, but he wasn't really available retail. He was just in that box of Plunder. So that's a really good commander to have available to everybody.
Yeah, and he's got more of an 18th century look to him.
Yep. Fancier wig.
Yeah.
These are resin, by the way.
Yes, those are resin miniatures. Those are not the plastics.
Yep.
And want to remind everybody that Searle's Raid, the reenactment that I take part in, is March 1st, 2025. Love to see you come out and either participate or spectate. Trying to get the attendance up for this year. I know the reenactment community around these events was hit hard by COVID, and they're trying to recover everything. So, be a great opportunity to come out and see what all that's about.
Got the Great Pirate Painting Contest starting January 1st. So buy your minis now. Start painting them now, but they just have to be finished in the new year to qualify for the painting contest. There'll be some prizes and fun posts with people's painted minis coming up. So get ready for that if you like to paint.
Yeah, and we've got at the end of March, Adepticon coming up the 26th through the 30th, and that's going to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we're all working hard to get that event as fun and as interesting as we can get it.
Jason's been doing a ton of work on organizing events and packing out his minivan in his mind and figuring out how many buckets and stuff he can fit in there.
I'm telling you, next like 2026, we're gonna need a U-Haul van.
I think so. And Dan's been painting up a storm. Fernando's been painting up a storm. We've been testing up games. Should be a good time. We're putting a lot of work into it. Hopefully it pays off and everybody has a good time. But definitely come. It'll be the Blood and Plunder convention. Probably the most events available and most players there. Probably Historicon's really big too, and Gen Con will be good. But this will be the biggest one as far as Blood and Plunder. Probably.
I'm considering doing a tournament for Gen Con. Not official yet, but I kind of want to.
That'd be great.
If I have the time slots, I will definitely want to do it. In addition to a multiplayer game, I think that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely going to be a sea tournament because if I'm going to be by myself, I don't have enough terrain to do a big land tournament. So
yeah, that's hard.
I can borrow mats from Mike and the Firelock guys. I can't bring a ton of terrain. So for more Blood and Plunder content, you can go to bloodandpigment.com and check out all of the content we have over there. We have articles on ships, nations, factions, terrain, painting guides, battle reports, anything you can think of, really. So go check that out.
And try to keep up with our YouTube channel. I still got that Benderson little interview coming out as soon as I can get it edited.
It's coming. It's coming.
I need to send. Yeah. Anyway, it'll be out one way or another in the next couple of weeks, but it's killing my soul. And I got some battle reports ready to make once I get out of this interview editing. And if you want to see all the progress on our cool dioramas for display at Adepticon, you might consider our Patreon as well.
And as always, keep your dice ready to win at your back. Yar har.